Hi everyone, it's Andrew from Ant.RC and I'm here to give you a little update on the CA30. So I can't remember what part this is, part 5 I think. I'm moving things along a little bit so that you don't get too bored watching it. The cab has now been mostly weathered. So I'm going to start here and go through what it is I've done so far so you can see that. And then I'm going to talk about the rear, the bed that I'm scratch building. I haven't really started yet. I haven't put knife to plastic, but I want to just keep you up to date with what's going on there. Okay, so let's have a look at the cab, and we'll see what I've done, and I'll talk about how I've done it, and we can. If you've got any questions, of course, with all of that, you can ask them. So let's zoom in and have a look at this. Okay, so what we can see on here is where we left the previous video. This was painted with the base coat of green. I primed it, and then it had the base coat of green, which is quite an ivy green. And I have to be honest, I wasn't terribly enamoured with the tone of green that it was. So what I've had to do is to try and change the tone of the green without a complete respray, because not only do I want a slightly different tone, that's just a personal choice, but what I also wanted was a multi-layered, kind of faded, blotchy, worn look. You know, it's 30, 40, 50 years old, so I wanted a faded, interesting paintwork. And I will be honest, the ones I've seen, there's the reference to Combat Crew I made last time, I'll put again in the description below. All the ones I've seen in real life on YouTube are all flat, one-tone, matte, washed out green, which is not terribly interesting, especially not on a scale truck. I think that's one of the things you get away from when you go down to a scale truck. You have to have some variation there somewhere, otherwise it looks a bit toy-like. So I have taken a bit of an artistic license with this. Now, I may have taken too much of an artistic license. You can be the judge of that. I'm personally thinking I've gone a bit overboard with this, so I'm going to be taking some steps to pull this back a little bit. But what have I done? What I've done is... Oh, and there are some pictures on YouTube at Ant.RC Fun. Put the link on the screen now, and certainly in the description below. There is a set of photographs on there showing how the kind of stages I've gone through. I could put the slideshow in the video, couldn't I? Around here somewhere, just so you can see. Obviously started with the basic green paint work. I tried to get that as smooth and as nice as possible, just as a practice exercise. That was then matte lacquered, because it was a sort of semi-gloss finish, so it wasn't going to take very much work. If it was gloss, it would just rub straight off. So the matte lacquer allowed me to have a surface that things would adhere to. What I then did first was to put a much more suitable tone of green brush painted over the top. And that was brush painted a very thin coat. Thin as in watered down. In fact, it was enamel, so it was white spirited down. It was acrylic paint underneath and acrylic lacquer, so the acrylic kind of doesn't get too upset about white spirit as long as you don't kind of push your luck. So I could put a washed enamel coat over the top of a much closer green to the one you see, and that gave me a much more satisfactory colour tone, as well as a lot of variation. So maybe you can see some of the variation. There is quite a lot of variation, even just in the basic green tone that's floating around now. Once that dried, and this progress has been a little slow because I've had to let all these things dry properly before moving to the next stage. The next stage after that was another acrylic wash of white, because I wanted the fading. Obviously, when something fades, it turns paler. So I've put a white, almost like a frosty look on the truck, which you can see remnants of floating around. You can see most of the highlights that you can maybe make out. Zoom in a bit. Most of the highlights that you can see on here, most of them, are the white wash. I have added some silver highlights since then, but most of what you can see Again, especially on the roof section, where you can maybe make out some of the white marks on there still. To give it, you know, again, just to give it, I knew it was too much at the start. Look, a lot of the white on the door here. This is all from the whitewash. You can see little marks of it, little bits of it left. I knew it was too much at the start, but it was then going to get the dark coat. So the final weathering coat it had the other night, and I finished last night, it's taken a few evenings to get around the truck, is a combination of brown and dark green acrylic. Mixed, I put them in the same palette, and then let me zoom out again. I put them in the same little palette I've got, and just kind of dab the brush somewhere and then end up with a kind of mixture. So if I want a bit more brown on a bit, I'll just go to the brown side, and then a bit more green, I'll go, but neither, it's rarely ever a separate colour. It's always some kind of combination of the two. I can just kind of move between the sides of the palette to influence which side, which colour I want to be dominant. So I've then washed that with a brush again, just by kind of doing this. So on this bonnet edge here, I'd have gone like this with the brush. So it wasn't a wash like the white was, which was much more kind of all over the place. This was a very much a deliberate brushing action. So you can see that there's obviously more brown pigment near the joint on the bonnet than there is in the middle section here, and the middle section down here. I'm using artists acrylics, which I don't normally. I'd normally just use a Tamiya acrylic, but I got some pouches of artists acrylic cheap, and they're like 8 times the size of a Tamiya pot. So, you know, being a cheap northerner, I went for those. So I'm a little bit. They're a funny combination. Of funny. They act differently, I should say, to the Tamiya paint. They stay wet for quite a long time, and then they dry suddenly. And once they've dried, you really have to scrape them off, which is where letting each coat set for 24 hours is why. That's why I'm taking so long with this, because I know there's going to be a bit of labour involved, a little bit of physical work on the job to bring these washes back off again, if I leave them too long. Whereas the Tamiya paint has got a much more sort of linear, drying off curve where you can kind of work it better. I will say the Tamiya paint is a bit easier to work with. This is a bit hard work once you've let it dry. You're in danger of taking off previous layers because you're trying to scrub off the wash you've put on. So yeah, live and learn. But so that's really where I am with this. Then I've gone around and put some bare metal kind of just patches on, which I will again come back to. I mean, they're just dabbed on. It really. I would have liked to have salted this, but to be honest, you know, the main part of this is the box build. It's not this, so I didn't want to get too lost in this. I'd never get it finished. So things like that. I would prefer to salt now. I'm comfortable with that situation, with that method. But I've just dabbed those on with a brush. They will probably get a little bit of touching up with some green again, just to kind of reduce them a little bit, and then I'll dab a bit of rust spots in. Just to put some highlights on, and really, I think the brown on this is perhaps a little bit. I was going for weathered, but I seem to have ended up with sort of derelict, which was a little bit further than I was expecting to go with it. Yeah, so I might bring some green back and put some green on some of this brown stuff, just to kind of make it a little less brown, a little bit less dark, bring it up a bit, just to maybe overall reduce the condition, the tattiness of it. The interior is also done. I'm going to show you as best I can here, and let's hope we can get some light on this, maybe through the back window. No, I don't know how we're going to get enough light on the dashboard without taking the whole thing apart. Anyway, I'll try and get some dashboard shots maybe in a minute. I'll get it over by the window. So the dashboard is in. It's all screwed together, which is quite nice. You can actually technically unscrew all of this. This is not completely, assembled beyond return. It does still all come apart. So That's a nice feature. You don't have to commit to a whole bunch of glue to get this, together. At this point, it's all screwed together. So I like that. Here's the. Let's move this to one side. Here's Harley in her seat. So you saw this last before it was finally painted and weathered up. So I'm quite pleased with how that's come out. I'll zoom in on this because the light's a bit better over here. So you can see, hopefully, there's some texture on the black seat because that's just black vinyl in the reality. I've put a couple of floor mats in on the. Where are you? There you go. Yeah. So there's some floor mats in there. One of them is on top of the other. So there's a curled edge there, just so you've got a little bit of. Oh, where are you? Doing this backwards. There you go. So there's a little bit of texture, a little bit of interest, a little bit of something just to give you a sort of 3D depth effect. The seat which was padded, you may remember, that was padded with some foam. Come on, video. There you go. That was padded with some foam. That's come out quite nice. I do like how that is how she's sitting in there. Hello, there we go. So she's quite, and then she's screwed in, as you can tell at the back there. So she's pushed into the back of the foam padding. Her legs are a little bit long, as you can see, but they certainly will do the job for what's required. You can see what I've basically added is a CB radio, and I've put some stickers on for dials. They're not in the right place. It's not representative of the real dashboard and so forth of the truck. I don't have decals that small, so I've had to use ones I've got. It serves its purpose. And there's the red hand comes from our friends Blood Brothers Crawl over in Holland, who sent me a nice decal sheet, and so I recommend hitting those guys up on Instagram for some pretty good stickers. It's where the Elastoplast stickers from, and fake taxi and stuff that you've seen on other videos. That's where they come from, and that's their logo, the red hand. Right, so that's that. Now then, let's finish with that. That's probably took about 20 minutes for me to go through. Let's talk briefly about what I'm doing with the box. Right, so as far as this build for the box goes, I've got some plans off the internet, which I shall leave you a link to, showing a late model Ural, but that's not, the truck's not that important. It's the bed, obviously the box on the back, which I've done a bigger print of here, which is just a zoomed in version. And from this, which is really handy, it's got sort of dimensions for the window spacing and so on, is I've made up some paper templates, which I think are quite an important step, so that I can get the handle on the size I'm going to use. So these are the two sides. Obviously you can see the windows are marked out on this one. These are the two ends, so I've got an idea. I've used the sort of proportions off the plans to get the angle. The height I've had to take a guesstimate on, because it doesn't tell you. I know it stands up a fair amount more than the cab height, so I've kind of gone by eye on that. So that's really as far as I've gone. Yeah, just some paper templates, which I'm going to finish off drawing on this weekend. So I'm going to get the other windows over this side. I've got to mark out a door area. There's various hatches and things I've got to try and I've got to sketch out. And from there, I will then turn to the plastic card itself and start cutting the card out. Yeah, hopefully the same sizes. I've had to think about one of the things to bear in mind when you're measuring off a scale plan and then replicating it on a paper, or indeed straight on a card if you're brave, is the thickness of the card. You have to consider what impact that's going to have on the joints, on the spacing and the sizing that you're going to have. So these, for example, are a little bit longer, 2mm each side, wider than the plan would suggest, because they are going to go against, a 2mm thick wall section. So they've not only got to reach the wall section, the side section, they've got to go over it. So the end pieces are going to overlap. So little decisions like that, it helps, I think, to make the paper template, allows you to have a chance to think about it before you just start cutting into plastic. So yeah, so that's really all I've got to show you on this front. Hopefully I'll have more of this done on the next video and we can start to see some plastic coming together. Alright, so thanks for watching. Have a nice long weekend if you're in the UK. It's Friday morning, bank holiday Friday morning, and yeah, busy 3 days ahead. Alright, thanks guys. Catch you next time. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe. Yeah, hit the bell. If you're interested in this CA30 build and interested in watching me make some kind of plastic monstrosity for the back, yeah, make sure you hit the bell so you can get the next gripping installment. Alright, thanks guys. Have a nice one.